Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Putman. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the Regional Director for NASPA Region 2 and also serve as the Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University in Brooklyn, New York. And welcome to our panel of Chief Student Affairs Officers for the NASPA Region 2 Careers and Student Affairs Symposium. I'm going to give a brief bio on our participants today. But before we begin, if there are any questions that you'd like to ask at any point during the session, please feel free to use the chat room to put your questions in, and I'll be happy to ask them as we go along in our conversation. Just for background, for my background, I currently serve as I said, Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University in Brooklyn. I'm both the Chief Student Affairs Officer as well as the Deputy Chief Academic Officer. And I do also have a faculty title as a Clinical Assistant Professor in the Department of Psychiatry. I previously served over almost now 28-year career as Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students here at Downstate, as Assistant Dean for Student Affairs, and prior to coming to Downstate, I held multiple roles, including Interim Dean of Students at Purchase College of the State University of New York up in Westchester County. And I earned my Doctor of Education in Higher and Post-Secondary Education from Teachers College, and I also have a Master's of Education and a Master of Arts in Higher Ed Admin from TC and a Bachelor of Arts from Purchase College in Westchester. Dr. Delmy Lendof is the Vice President for Student Affairs at Pratt Institute, and she has over 25 years of experience working in higher education and serving students. She's a proud first-generation college student, and she's passionate about student success and mentoring students and professionals. She also received her Doctor of Education degree from Teachers College. Everyone here did, by the way. A Master of Science in College Student Development from Long Island University, and a Bachelor of Arts in Politics, Economics, and Society from the State University of New York College at Old Westbury, which I believe is now a university. To change your bio. Her top priority is the student experience, safety, satisfaction, and success. And the division and its staff are there to support students through their Pratt journey. Dr. Brian Mitra is the Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management at Queensborough Community College, which is part of the City University of New York. And Dr. Mitra is a dedicated student affairs professional. His responsibilities include oversight and management of student affairs and enrollment management. He serves on the college's senior administration as a department chair and sits on several college-wide committees, including the behavioral intervention team and equity initiatives. Dr. Mitra has held several leadership positions in NASPA Region 2, sits on the board of directors for Opportunity for a Better Tomorrow, which exists to break the cycle of poverty and equity through education, job training, and employment. And he serves as an external contributor for the JED Foundation, which protects the emotional health and prevents suicide for young adults, and is a board member for the HERDI, is that how you pronounce it, Brian? HERDI, Innovate. Prior to being vice president at Queensborough, he served as dean, associate dean, and assistant dean for student affairs, director of the Office of Career Development, Transfer and Scholarship Opportunities, and the job placement coordinator in a long career at Queensborough Community College, also part of the City University of New York. He was also a grad assistant in commuter student affairs and student activities advisor at Stony Brook. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Health Science and an advanced certificate in healthcare management from Stony Brook, his Master of Arts in Community Health Education from Brooklyn College, and his doctorate in adult learning and leadership from Teachers College. Dr. Tom Rock is the Associate Vice President and Chief Student Affairs Officer at Teachers College. He's originally from the Finger Lakes and has over 30 years of experience in student affairs, having worked in undergraduate and graduate admissions and enrollment management and graduate student affairs. In his role as Associate Vice President and Chief Student Affairs Officer, Dr. Rock is the Senior Student Affairs Officer for Teachers College and oversees the administrative offices and staff members that support students on their pathways at Teachers College. He's passionate about student success and helping students flourish at TC and beyond. He's worked in the field of undergraduate admissions and college counseling at the University of Dayton, Alfred University, and the Albany Academy in New York. He's also worked in graduate admissions at Columbia University, Hofstra University, and Teachers College. His student affairs work has been at Teachers College. He also received a certificate of completion from the Harvard Graduate School of Education for participation in the Institute for Management and Leadership in Education. And he was awarded a Fulbright scholarship in 2018 and traveled to Japan as part of the Fulbright Administrator Scholarship Program. In his spare time, I love talking about this, he's also a runner, and he's finished 15 New York City marathons. I have not finished one. I haven't started one either. So he's a USTA certified tennis official and enjoys spending time with his family and traveling. And I hope this is okay to say too. He also was once a TV star. He was on The Amazing Race back in 2006. I know you hate us talking about that, but it's just a unique part of Tom's background. So I always like to bring that up. He did not get rich on it, though, I can tell you that.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. So now that I've bored everyone with our bios, my apologies for that, just so everyone knows who we are. Maybe it would be helpful to start by talking a little bit about, beyond your professional bio and what you put on LinkedIn, how did you get where you are today professionally? Any one of you can start. Okay, I'll pick one of you. Brian, you can start. You're first on my screen.
So I guess my path is a little non-traditional for student affairs, right? As you kind of heard, none of my degrees are in higher education or student affairs. First generation, right? My family, or I thought I was going to be in healthcare, until I got to Stony Brook and I realized, the sciences weren't necessarily for me. And I was asked politely to leave because of my GPA, so I wasn't going to be that physical therapist. But then, in my junior year, found this new program, which was non-clinical in health sciences, and had an opportunity to continue to work in healthcare. So I took that route and went healthcare administration. During that same period, I found out you could work at a college, right? So I was involved in a lot of different activities. I lived on campus and found out that, you could do some things. And that's where an opportunity presented itself for me in commuter student affairs. And that really started, my career in higher ed, right? I became an activities advisor where I advised a lot of clubs and organizations, and really got a humbling experience and an introduction into higher ed through student activities, working parties till 4 a.m. at Stony Brook, advising 350 clubs and organizations, right? But it really opened higher education to me. So then I just kind of pursued it and took advantage of opportunities that presented itself in terms of event planning and things like that. So that started my career into, or my opportunity into Queensborough Community College, where I started in career as a job placement coordinator and planning events around, working with companies and organizations. And then it just kind of, blossomed from there. Learned a lot from experience, but also with the foundation of an administration background, which I continue to pursue at CUNY in community health education. And then even my doctorate, right? It's not in the higher education background at TC, it's in adult learning and leadership in the Aegis program. So a different lens, but still applicable to the work that we do in higher education. And I have an opportunity also to work with students in a different way, where I teach at Stony Brook in their health science program, the program that I graduated from. So, not conventional, but learn from experiences and kind of build upon that, and a lot of tutelage, a lot of mentorship, and from folks in this room right now. So it was really a different journey, if you will.
Thank you, Brian. Tom, why don't you go next?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that question, Jeffrey. For me, I remember my first position in higher ed in undergrad admissions at the University of Dayton, and I don't remember thinking that someday I would be a chief student affairs officer. But like many, young professionals in the field, and many students who are studying higher ed, especially at TC, I think my pathway might be somewhat similar to theirs in that I was a student leader on my undergrad campus, which was the University of Dayton in Ohio, and I just was involved in as much as I could possibly be involved with. So there were professionals on campus who really kind of took me under their wing and I found myself on committees with them. Anytime they ever needed a student representative for something, I would sometimes be asked. And so I was a communication studies major. I thought I was going into public relations and marketing and everything. And then, I was a tour guide in the admissions office as I was an undergrad student. And I loved giving tours of campus. And it was an assistant director of admission who, now that I think about it, was probably all of 25 years old at the time. But I thought she was much older. And she basically called me into her office one day and she was like, have you ever thought of this career? And I'm like, wait, what? And she said, anyways, she gave me some great feedback being a campus tour guide, the different committees and student involvement I was on. And really, she kind of enlightened me and is still a mentor for me, enlightened me to the field. And then lucky enough, the University of Dayton was hiring in the admissions office. And I was able to accept what they back then was really a 6-month admission job. And they were looking to hire graduating seniors to go to their hometown areas and do a lot of admission recruiting. And I was like, you know what? Wow, that is communications, that is public relations, that is marketing. I don't know how long I'm going to stay in this field of higher education, but wow. Loved my university, really respected her. So glad that she took the time to call me into her office like that. And then the rest is history. And then I just kind of went from there, but started my career in admissions, enrollment management, enrollment services, but always approached that work with a student affairs lens. And so then I had the opportunity to create something at Teachers College and to create a division of student affairs, which we never had. And so I took that as a huge opportunity to really try to put graduate student affairs on the map. And there's really no better place to do that than at TC. So really have tried to think about, look at everything that I've learned in the field through my doctorate, through my advanced studies, and how do we apply some best practice student affairs work to creating graduate student affairs. So looking at NASPA, best practices and competencies, and then tweaking them for a graduate student affairs environment. So I'm very fortunate to have been at TC now for 20 years. And yeah, I don't see myself really doing anything else other than graduate student affairs. And I want TC to be the leader in that. I want TC to be the expert in that. We need to write some books. We need to write some articles. So anytime anybody ever looks at graduate student affairs, I want them to look at TC.
Excellent. We're going to get back to the graduate piece, but Delmy.
Yeah, so I guess for me, a little bit like Brian, I was a political science undergrad major and I thought I was going to law school. And then I did every involvement opportunity at my undergraduate institution, from orientation to RA to athletics to student government. So I did everything. And then as many of you, I'm sure on this call, encountered a vice president or a director who said, why don't you look at grad school and do this as a career? And I did. I spent most of my career, though, in housing and residence life. I started at Rutgers, New Brunswick in New Jersey. I then worked at TC for a little while, went back to Rutgers, then spent a good chunk of my life at NYU in Manhattan, still doing housing and residence life, maybe longer than most folks do. That wasn't planned, but I did. And in 2019, I transitioned to NYU Steinhardt as an associate dean for student affairs. And that was more on the academic side, overseeing advising, registration, international students support services. So it was a very different portfolio. And I was there for a very short period of time, and then God had it. And I transitioned in 2021 to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, As Vice President for Student Affairs, again, very different portfolio in terms of what I do now. But what I would say is Res Life was a great foundation. And throughout my journey, I was very much involved in regional and national organizations. NASPA has been my home for the longest. And then in addition to my involvement in organizations at every institution that I've worked at, I would say I was always involved in work outside of my job. So whether I was volunteering to do DEI work, opportunity fund work, Title IX work, a number of committees, things that I felt like will help me build my portfolio and my experience so that when I got to this level, I felt I had the experiences that I was going to need to be successful. So that's been a little bit of my journey.
So thank you all for those answers. Going back to what Tom was talking about graduate student affairs, I wonder, and we did purposefully pick you three as panelists because you work at very different types of institutions. So I wondered if you can talk about, maybe we'll start, we'll go in reverse order this time, and start with Delmy, because you work at probably the most traditional of the four of us institution, even though I would not consider Pratt necessarily a traditional institution. But talk about what the different types of institutions, and we've all worked at other types of institutions as well, and how that factors in and how you prepare for a job in student affairs.
Yeah, I definitely think is different kind of institutions are different. But what I would say is no matter what institution you're at, you just have to make sure that you really branch out of your individual role to really understand as much as you can about that institution. And the different units within that institution. I would say outside of that, it's also important for me to think a little bit about your engagement and involvement with organizations and in institutes and your own professional development and growth, because that's where you learn in terms of pushing the boundaries. Institutions are very different, though. I would say I love Rutgers. If anyone knows me, they would assume I used to say that I was going to retire at Rutgers. I was going to go back to Rutgers and retire. I loved everything about that place. But what I love about Rutgers was the students. Like the students and the people were amazing. But in a big state system, you are just like, no matter how high you move up, you still like a little bucket of this humongous place, right? So I think for a lot of folks, it's just thinking about where is your scope of influence, I think. And my scope of influence at Rutgers was in Res Life, was in mentorship in terms of developing professionals. And that was great. And I loved it. TC felt very small and homey. So I got to know the president. You know, it's just like at a place like TC, you get to know the president, you get to know the provost, you get to know the leadership in a way that it didn't matter that I was an assistant director for Res Life. But even though I was an assistant director for Res Life, I got to interact with everybody. And that didn't happen at Rutgers in the same way. So I think, again, when you think about a smaller place, it's very different. And then think about NYU. NYU is huge. And even though I got to be an associate dean, I was an associate dean who reported to a vice dean, who reported to a dean, who reported to the provost, like just the chain of command, even though I had interactions with the president's office and the provost, was still very different. So it's just it was very different in terms of that experience. The institution was huge. So the scope of my student connection to students and also the scope of the work felt very different. Even though I transitioned to a school, it was still very different. Pratt, on the other hand, is 5,000 students. I report directly to a president. I work very closely with my provost. I know all my VPs, the VPs in terms of the cabinet, and I have a great relationship with them. I know the deans, and I have a great relationship with the deans. So even though it is very small, I think the biggest difference here is the opportunity to be at the table. And I say that because for some of you here, you may be thinking, well, do I have to be a VP to sit at the table? And the reality is no. Based on the institution that you are, you could be a director who has a lot of that interaction with the president and with the provost. And that could happen based on the kind of institution. You could be a VP in a big place and still not have that interaction. So I think it's that give and take of what are your values? What do you aspire to? What are the things that are important to you? And you heard me earlier say, like, I used to dream about my retirement at Rutgers because I still love that place. But having come to Pratt, which I knew nothing about before I came to Pratt, so I want to own that I knew absolutely nothing about Pratt until I applied for this job. So when I interview, people ask, like, what do you know about art and architecture? I'm like, nothing, but I know a whole lot about student affairs, and I've been good at it. So it was more in terms of what I contributed to Pratt. Having been in the space since 2021, I could tell you I could totally retire at Pratt. Like, I have amazing students, an amazing president, an amazing staff. It's a great place to be. And I have an opportunity to sit at the table and be part of the change that I've never had in any other institution. So I'm like, I am super happy. So all I would say is, it's good to try new and different kinds of places. If you find a place that you're happy, by all means, stay there. But I think there's something to be said about being open to trying different kinds of institution, because you learn from each and every one of them.
Brian.
So I mean, I agree with Delmy, right? I think, you know, for me, you know, I've been in the community college space for over 20 years now, and I found my niche, right? I found where I can make it, I feel like I can make a difference. And I think that's something really important as we consider our roles and where we want to do, what we want to do and who we want to work with, right? And not everybody is fit, as Delmy said, to be part of a city university with over 200,000 students, right? You know, and understanding and navigating the politics around that, right? You know, and I think it's important to gain those different experiences and find where you feel like you can make the most impact, right? Let's face it, not everybody has to be a vice president, nor do you want to be, right? I know all four of us could say there are nights or days or you know, situations where we question, why are we doing what we're doing, right? But I think you know, think about the population you want to serve, think about the institution, right? You know, that you want to kind of work with. And I encourage you to get those different experiences. You may try community college, say, you know what, this is not the population I want to work with, and that's okay. You know, for me, I have an opportunity to work with students every semester, a brand new cohort of students, right? You know, but I also understand that school isn't always the priority, right? It's their caregivers, their families, their work full time. Oh, and then let me throw school in, right? But I put my students against anybody. They just need a chance and an opportunity, right? They're transferring to Columbia. They're transferring to NYU. They just need a solid footing for them to get started in. So, you know, as you think about, you know, higher ed and the different opportunities, like Tom said, graduate, community college, 4 years, state, private, public, really do your research to kind of get a sense of where do you feel comfortable and who do you feel comfortable working with, right? Sometimes, you know, there are Catholic universities that perhaps you don't necessarily agree with your morals and values, right? You have to be okay with that as well, right? So really try to get a good breadth of the different places and the different types, and I think it'll help kind of, you know, like you said, I could retire here, right? You know, I 10 more years and I'm a city employee, right? That's the other thing. So you think a little bit about, you know, what you're looking to do and how you can contribute, right? And I do have a seat at the table, but I have a seat at the larger table within the city university system, right? Where, you know, I'm interacting with the other vice presidents, the vice chancellors, the chancellor, and things like that, right? So, you know, it's important to kind of get those different experiences and figure out where your fit is going to be, because that's going to be important fit.
That's good. And Tom, you and I both work at graduate institutions, me at Health Science Center, Standalone Health Science Center, and you at Teachers College. What about graduate type institutions is different from working at undergrad?
Yeah, sure. You know, I think that there is a real opportunity in graduate student affairs. Right now, I think for far too long, graduate students have been somewhat ignored on college campuses. And whether it's a large institution, you know, where it's very much decentralized, they might have a dean of students, say, at the law school or school of social work or however it's organized. So there could be like a student affairs or student service unit within a school. Teachers College is unique in that we are we are an independent institution. We obviously are an affiliate of Columbia University, but we are our own school. So I've been able to, really be creative and to think about something maybe that mirrors many other institutions. I don't have to kind of be folded into, everything that's happening on the Columbia main campus, although there's a lot. But could really create our own identity of what student affairs needs to look like at a place like Teachers College. So been really fortunate in that regard. I would say it's interesting. Our current president of Teachers College really put this on the map for us. Even during his inauguration, when he spoke about guided student pathways, and he's a community college expert, is now the president of Teachers College. And so he was proposing that we could do something at Teachers College, like basically like the community colleges have done, and it would be creating graduate student pathways. And he also proposed, and think about it, this really resonated with me, that graduate students are actually pretty similar demographically to community college students. They are full-time, they are part-time, they are, maybe with family, maybe not. They are single parents, they are juggling jobs. And so it was really interesting to hear that perspective back in 2018. And then that's when we got to work right away and created a division of student affairs at the college. But basically, it was really thinking again, using that community college model, which is well researched, well documented, and then applying that at a graduate and professional school like Teachers College. So I think that's the next book, or that's the next article in graduate student affairs, is the graduate student pathway. And so at Teachers College and like many other graduate schools, we did have a collection of offices that really did a great job, and that they were they were doing what they knew best, and that was, servicing the students at the college. But we did not have until 2018 an identity of graduate student affairs. So that's the work that we did to try to like pull these offices together, integrate them, and really have a presence that there is a team. And graduate student needs, again, are different. Maybe very similar to community colleges in so many ways. Students can be really vulnerable, and again, what they're juggling and what they're involved with. Student engagement looks very different at a graduate and professional school, whether I'm working with a full-time student or a part-time student. Our programs and our services, we cannot have one size fits all. Some students we meet with, and honestly, they are as fully engaged as they care to be, which is 1 day a week coming to Teachers College, and going to their classes, and that's the level of engagement that they can possibly manage right now. There are other students at Teachers College who want to be involved and engaged with us every single day. They are full-time, they're international, they live in the residence halls. So it's really understanding at a graduate and professional school, like where your students are at, and then making sure that you have the services, and that you can really help them define student engagement without us defining that for them, and what that could look like, and how involved they want to be at a graduate and professional school. So that's where I would say it's very similar. I would say for anybody who's interested again in working in this field, there's a great opportunity. I think colleges and universities are paying a lot more attention to their graduate students now. And there's also a wonderful NASPA knowledge community that I'm involved with, AGAPS, which is the knowledge community for graduate and professional staff members who work in this area of graduate student affairs.
That's great. So I did have one question to ask Brian, but any of you can actually answer this. There's always this feeling that some have that if you go and work at a community college, let's say, that you would find it difficult to later get a job in a more traditional institution. Or the same might be said for someone who works in a graduate institution to get a job than an undergraduate institution. And I know when I came to downstate, I came from a traditional undergraduate institution at Purchase. And they've told me since then that part of the reason I got hired was my area of knowledge that I had with working in the state system in SUNY, as opposed to my knowledge in working with graduate students. They felt they could teach me that. But specifically to Brian, but to others as well. What do you think about this opportunity, whether folks who are interested in opportunities in potentially community college, then potentially finding it difficult to find other types of positions afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's common, right? In any job that you go into. But I think, and both Tom and Delmy alluded to this before, right? It's the skill sets that you develop, right? And how you get involved in other things, right? So if I were to stay in my own student affairs and community college niche, perhaps it would be hard for me to, to kind of delve into other things. But I think, I make sure that I'm involved in the fundraising, the academic affairs side, and the most important thing when you transition to a university, a different college or university, is understanding the students and the culture, right? So that's the things that you have to learn. But how you build your skill sets and how you sell and market yourself, that's what is going to set you apart from another candidate, right? So I've been here 20, in community colleges for over 20 years. But if I were to apply to a, four-year institution graduate, I would look to see what they're looking for and how I could sell myself and the skills that I bring for that particular thing, right? So it may not necessarily be the institution, but I can learn about the institution. It's how you work around those skill sets and how you continue to better yourself, to know where my gaps are, or where my blind spots are, or where I need to be better informed, right? And I think that's one thing you constantly should be doing regardless, right? So although, yes, my niche is community colleges, I think it'd be important for me to understand what's going on at the four-year end of the graduate school, because that's where my students are going eventually, right? So I think, just to, it's an easy narrative to spin, but you also have to make sure that you're doing yourself justice by understanding what's going on at those other institutions as well.
So going off that question, and this is for any of you to answer, what would you say are those skills and experiences, skills, however you want to define them, that you should make sure you have in your career if you're looking to advance to a senior level position? Delmy, you want to take a crack?
I would say before we even think, I think one thing that has gotten lost, in my opinion, is before we think about skills and experiences, for me, I always say, are you doing the best work that you can in your current role? And I know it's just like, I could have 1,000 skills, but am I performing my day-to-day job to the best of my ability? I think that is the number one thing. No matter what job you have, it could be your first entry-level job. Are you doing the best work that you can in that entry-level job and in every job that you hold ever since? So I would say for anyone here today is just asking that question. Am I doing the very best job at my current work? So to me, it's not a skill. It's about doing the work and doing it well. The second piece is what I call the checking of the blind spots. Do people around me, including my supervisors, my colleagues, think that I'm doing the best work that I could be doing? And that's not a skill. This is, again, about how you are perceived by your supervisor, by the people that you supervise, and by your colleagues. I've seen it way too often where folks think that they are doing an amazing job, including myself. I may think I'm doing an amazing job as a vice president, but that goes only so far if my direct reports don't think I'm doing a good job, if my supervisor doesn't think I'm doing a good job, if my colleagues don't think that I am good at working with them. So I think the relationships at those levels, both up, below, and side, are so important. And then outside of that, then you could begin working on those skills. But I think those are the two things that we don't talk enough about that really, really matter. And I say that because at the end of the day, if you're applying for promotion within your institution, people are going to look to see how you play with your colleagues. Like, do you get along with your colleagues? Are you a good partner? Are you working well with them? Your direct reports are going to look to you and be like, what makes you think that you're ready if you haven't been a good supervisor, right? And your boss is going to tell you what makes you think you're ready if you haven't done your job and haven't done it well. So for me, it's that self-awareness, both that comes within, but also from outside. Once you have those two things, then I think the skills and experiences, I think it's a matter of thinking about what's the job that you're applying for. And I generally encourage folks to think about, if you have aspirations to be a VP, begin looking at postings, look at what skills and experiences are there, look to identify what skills and experiences you don't have, and then try to create the opportunities to gain those experiences. So an example of that would be like when I was a director of residential staff and programs at NYU, I was just like, oh, Title IX. Yeah, it's not the most fun thing, but it was an experience, right? So I started volunteering to be a Title IX adjudicator. It gave me that experience. And now I'm like, okay, you could bring anything related to Title IX to my table. I feel like, and I've kept up with that experience, right? When we think about DEI, I never aspired to be a DEI or Chief Diversity Officer, but I've definitely done a lot of time doing the work so that I could be better in the work that I do, because I've actually, even though I don't want that title, I feel like I bring in a good amount of knowledge in that area. Budget management, I didn't necessarily have all of that, but guess who? One of my closest friends at work, I've become BFFs with my VP for finance. We have a great relationship, and I'm trying to get that experience. If I ever decide I want to try to do something different, the area I currently feel like I know the least about and I have the least amount of experience is institutional advancement. So what am I doing? I'm the chair of the search committee for the VP for institutional advancement for my institution. So I'm gaining so much experience just by doing a search for the job that I know the least about in terms of my colleagues. So you could learn those skills, but nothing, and I want to stress this, in my world, nothing makes up for doing your job and doing it really well and making sure that your boss, your direct reports, and your colleagues think that you're doing your job and that you're doing really well at it.
Brian?
Yeah, no, I think Tom.
Oh, right. Yeah.
No.
Thank you. I can't agree more with what Brian and Delmy have both said. I really like, Delmy, how you framed the, performing at the best level that you can possibly perform at in your current role. Because I think too many people, I see this in the students that I teach in the higher ed program at TC, and some young professionals are stressed out or too focused on like getting to that next step or getting, it's great to have that as an aspiration. I think that like someday I want to be a dean of students or someday I want to be that VP, but I think some students are just too stressed out about like, well, why isn't it happening, sooner, or how can I make it happen next year or the year after or the year after. So kind of along the lines to some of the things that Delmy said, like I also just want students to, first of all, relax about that. And then secondly, like focus on your current role. Again, the points that Delmy made, are you doing the best you can possibly do? I love the advice is to like, because aspirations are so important. We all have to have them. So I love the idea of like looking ahead to those job descriptions and then where am I lacking maybe? And it doesn't mean I'm going to end up, if I'm, an assistant director or a counselor or something, it doesn't mean that maybe I need to ask for, how do I supervise this entire division or how do I supervise this entire department? But maybe you can start asking about supervising even a student employee, supervising a work study student, a grad assistant or something to gain some administrative supervisory experience. And then before you know it, and if you do a good job at that, you're probably going to be given more. And then maybe there will be a full-time employee someday that you'll be able to supervise. So I think like, right. So kind of thinking about it and then looking at like, where are you? And so is it time now for you to ask for some supervision of some sort, an intern or a student employee? And then the same thing with budget, because budgets are so important, and Delmy's BFS being, the VP of finance is a real testament to that close alignment. And so we all need our friends and our allies in all of these different positions. And so aligning with the VP of finance is probably a really great thing to do. And so right? So again, you're not going to go into your boss and ask for the full budget access, but maybe you're in charge of orientation one year, or maybe you're in charge of even a program, or maybe you're overseeing a budget for a student organization. Or, again, think about your field and your position. Are there some opportunities in your office where you could get a hold of a budget, even if it's a couple $1,000s or something that you can manage, you can control, and then you can work really closely with your supervisor to make sure that you're like, hitting that mark, hitting that budget. And I would say those experiences in supervision and budget and even some other things, committees, where you can gain some experience, it's going to just then really help propel you further. And so when you do go to that next step, whether it's an associate director or then eventually higher, you can talk about these experiences that you've had, and then undoubtedly those will be some natural responsibilities that come your way as you continue to advance. But I can't echo what Brian and Delmy have said about just, focus in on where you are right now, doing the best you can possibly do, and make sure that that's your reputation as well in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would also say that there is no single pathway to any position in higher ed. There are folks who say, and I talked about this morning with Joe Bertolino, who's a college president, and many of the folks who were in that session this morning, and we talked about the fact that there is no single path to the college presidency, and I think the same is true with being a vice president for student affairs. You don't have to go, oh, well, this person went in this particular order of positions. That's not necessarily the way you have to go to get from place A to place B. Sometimes that's, as Delmy talked about before, a size of institution, right? If you're at an NYU or a Rutgers, you're probably, and you're at an entry-level position, you're probably focused on a very thin piece of one office, right? But if you're at a smaller institution, an institution of 1,500 students or less, you probably have a much bigger experience breadth, but you're not getting as much experience in each individual area of the office. So sometimes to get those experiences, it's changing institutions. Sometimes it's going up through the institution you're at, but there is no necessarily one direct career path from one place to another in higher ed. Moving on to a slightly different topic, how do you know when it's time for the next job? How do you know when it's time to make yourself available for that next opportunity? And by the way, in asking this question, I want to be clear, it's okay to stay in a job that you're enjoying and like too. That's totally okay. You don't have to move up if that's not your goal. But if that's your goal, how do you know when the time is right? Who wants to take that one first?
I mean, I can jump in. I mean, one thing that I was just going to say was, right, so I'm one of the folks here who's been at my institution for a long time. I've been at Teachers College for 20 years. One thing that I would say has kept me there is the variety of responsibilities that I've been given. And so, I mean, it's been an institution that I think my colleagues know that I love, and I'm a graduate, and it's kind of part of who I am, and so I have always and will always deeply believe in the institution. So that has been great for me. But right, like the first half of my career at Teachers College was all really in the admissions enrollment world. And I really feel like I took my admissions and my enrollment background as far as it could possibly be taken at that point. And so to have the opportunity at my home institution to do something different really kept me there. Had maybe that opportunity not come my way, I might have thought of stepping out to try to do something a little bit different. So again, I was at a point where admissions and enrollment has run its course for me, and I was passionate about student affairs. And so when the provost opened up the conversation about creating something at Teachers College, I will say that conversation really kept me at Teachers College for this really, really long time. So it's about the opportunities and the opportunities that I've been given and the different levels of responsibilities. I do receive, as probably my colleagues do, it's nice to get to be on listservs for headhunters and to get all this different stuff all the time. I click them on, I will look at them, see like, what is this all about? But and then I will also really think about like, do I know somebody that I could like recommend or forward this to or something? One of my colleagues, I take a real hard responsibility and a strong responsibility in that as well. So it might not be the right time for me necessarily, but it's great to be on those lists and to be on those headhunter radar. But then sometimes it's really about referring somebody else. So again, what's kept me at my college is just the variety of opportunities I had. And then this most recent opportunity to create something really new and different and innovative for an institution that I love.
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to Tom, right? You know, that opportunity presented itself, right? So I think the support you get from that institution is key, right? You know, people believe in you, and as Delmy mentioned before, right? Let your results speak for yourself, right? You're here to do a job, so make sure you're doing the best at your job, right? Because I've run into many folks who are, you know, getting into the profession and are talking about being a director or a vice president already, and we just hired you, right? And you haven't even, you know, understand what your portfolio is, right? So I think having that mentorship is important, you know, and learning, you know, growing outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes you'll just know it's time to move on, right? I was at Queensborough for 18 years, right? You know, a lot of folks took chances on me, and you know, my hope is that it paid off, right? But at some points you recognize too, there isn't any further opportunity at that institution. So you're going to have to kind of start exploring, you know, what's available next if you want to continue to move up, you know, in terms of responsibilities and position and title and things like that. So you'll know, right? You know, we talked about, you know, waking up Sunday morning and dreading coming to work on Monday, right? I don't have that feeling, right? I look forward to coming to work, you know, and the challenges. So sometimes we don't have that, right? You know, but you'll kind of know when that moment is for you.
Yeah, I would add, like, I think there are 3 things that I generally think you need to look at in terms of your time versus like other times. So I would say is it has to be you. And like Jeff said earlier, it's okay to retire where you are if you're happy and content and you enjoy coming to work every day. But it's also about your family and the implications for what a move means for everybody else that you're responsible for or that counts into your decision making. And it's about your timing. Like you have to figure out, is this the right time for you to make a move? And while some of these things are related, I think a lot of times they are separate. And I think you need to be able to think about that, which is your institution and your colleagues. Oftentimes you feel like, I am ready for the promotion. And Tom, you talked about it, like going from admissions to here. Your institution may be the place where that does happen. It may be the place where you think that should happen, but it doesn't. So that may very well be the sign that you need to look to move elsewhere, because you may be ready for that promotion. You may be ready to try something different, but that may not happen at your institution. So that in and of itself may be the reason to, I need to look to move elsewhere, because you're ready, but your institution may not be ready or may not be the place. So sometimes that could be the driving factor to say, I need to look outside my institution because I'm ready, but they're not. So I think sometimes folks get frustrated expecting that the institution is going to change for you. It ain't. So let me just be real. There are institutions where that happens, and there are institutions where it doesn't. If you figure out that your institution, it's not going to happen, then you need to look to go, because you're going to be frustrated if you keep thinking that you're going to change the institution. You're not going to change the institution, folks. I don't even think presidents could change that institution at that level. So that's one of the areas where I would say it's the institution. The second piece is the colleagues. Sometimes you think you need to go because your colleagues are moving, or they're moving, you know, they're going from this role to that role to that role to the role. Stay on your lane. Don't compare your journey to anybody else's journey. Your journey is yours. Theirs is theirs. But sometimes we do compare, like, well, I need to be doing this because someone else did that. It doesn't work that way. So stay on your timing, and figure out what is your timeline. What are your where do you have flexibility and where don't you have flexibility? I stayed in Rest Life way longer than most people do. I was in Rest Life until 2019. So again, if I had compared myself to every one of my colleagues who went to be VPs and even presidents, I would have been super miserable and frustrated. But instead, I was just like, you know what? When my time comes, it comes. And it did. So again, you have to be able to say that. I could have been a VP much earlier in my career if I had been willing to go out of state. I was not willing to go that outside of the tri-state area. So there were some real limitations in regards to what that meant. So again, I think it's focusing on you, focusing on what your situation is in terms of family, your ability to relocate, not relocate, your happiness and fulfillment at your institution, or your unhappiness and lack of fulfillment at your institution. But ultimately, I would say it's about finding the place where you feel that you could thrive. And if you don't feel like you could do that at your institution, maybe that's a sign to look. And if and when in doubt, get a coach, get a mentor, talk to someone that can help you strategize about when is that time to look. But don't leave angry. I would say leaving out of anger is never a good thing either. Leave when you are in a good place. That's where you'll be missed, and be open to the opportunities and the places that maybe you wouldn't otherwise consider. I could honestly say I was very happy at my last few jobs. I've never left a job because I was like miserable. And I realized that that's a privilege. There are folks who are miserable. But what I would say is just be open to those opportunities when people say, hey, you ought to look at this. I would have never, ever looked at Pratt on my own, but people were like, you need to look at this. And I was like, okay. And then you just have to be open and receptive, because you just never know where that's going to be. But stay on your lane, stay on your journey.
We have a little bit more than 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure I get to this last question. And that is, what is one piece of advice, one or two pieces of advice that you would give to folks in terms of how to advance or continue in their career? And I want to start with one because I was going to ask this question, so you can feel free to work this into your answer. But one is something that Delmy just said that I think is incredibly important, which is that find yourself a mentor or a coach. And if you don't already have one, there are tricks to finding them, and to getting people to mentor you. And so just putting that out into the universe. But what are your main sources of advice in terms of career, not necessarily advancement? Again, you don't necessarily have to advance to have a great career, but your biggest career tips. Any one of you can start.
I mean, I think, just to piggyback, the mentorship has allowed me to be where I am today, right? I've had conversations with folks who, just allowed me to kind of just throw ideas at, and I still am able to do that, right, with folks in this room, right? So I think, establishing that or just having conversations with folks, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have mentors for everything, right? Stick with one or two mentors, people you can trust, because sometimes that information, it's conflicting, right? So, you want to kind of build that in. I think one thing, for me is just understanding and being politically savvy, right? And understanding that in these roles, as you aspire and you move up, there's some politics involved, right? Whether you want to believe that or not, or whether you enjoy that game or not, understand what that means and how to play that game, right? And I think that's one thing that I enjoy doing. I work in the city agency, right? So there's a lot of politics and a lot of ramifications that come along with the city budgets and things like that. But understanding that has helped me navigate tough situations, right? So I think that's one thing that, just and continue to learn.
Or Delmy?
I think I said it before, do your job and do it really, really well. The other thing I would say is make sure people know your aspirations, and surround yourself with people who believe in you, who see your work, and who could advocate for you and become mentors and sponsors. I would say most of my career has been me doing my job and doing it really well. And then the rest of it has been mentors and sponsors who have kind of like pointed or sponsored me or push me in a way that I didn't think possible. And then work on yourself. Like that's the only other thing I would say. Just make sure you really do your own self-work in terms of your growth and development and self-awareness, because that does go a long way.
The only thing I would add is to what Brian and Delmy have said is NASPA. Like NASPA Region 2 is a great resource. Programs like this, the regional in June in Philadelphia, and then if you do have an opportunity to go to national, wonderful. I think we are really fortunate that we have such a network of colleague support resources that are out there. So, and there are great programming, conferences, symposium, events for no matter what level you're at within the field of student affairs. So I would say if this is your first connection with NASPA, thank you so much, but don't let it be your last. And then just look at other ways that you can engage. It's a wonderful, wonderful community. And sometimes when we're faced with something or a challenge at our schools, like it's so wonderful to just be able to pick up the phone and talk to some colleagues through something. So we're very fortunate that we have a vast network of colleagues around the country.
And I myself would add, and those of you who were at the conference last summer, I said this in the end, in my end remarks as well. This is not a advertisement for LinkedIn, but you three have heard me say this a bunch of times already, but I always said LinkedIn works great when you use it, and it's a great way to make connections. But even when you have a presentation like this, adding the speakers, adding other folks you meet in a chat room, or if we were in person, and you say, you just add them on LinkedIn and make sure you use that feature where you add the comment and say, you were a speaker at this event. I met you at this event, because the little trick is that comment that you make on when you add someone on LinkedIn, it stays in the chat with that person. So later, if you're looking for a job and you happen to be looking for a job at Teachers College, and you search Teachers College on LinkedIn and you find that Tom works there, you can then send him a message and say, I don't know if you remember me, but you were a presenter at the NASPA Region 2 session, back in 2023 or 2024 it is now. In 2024, and I'm looking at this, job as an assistant director in career services. Do you know anything about it? Have you asked Tom anything other than for information? No, you haven't. So it's a safe thing to say. Does Tom know exactly what you're asking him? Of course he does, and anyone would. So they're going to write back and tell you about that job, hopefully, and potentially then, if they can help you connect with the right person, they will. But if you don't make those connections along the way, then you won't have those people out there who would be willing to help you. And almost everyone in this field is willing to help other people. If you just reach out and say, I'm just looking for information on this. Do you know anyone? You don't have to ask them to help you get the job. So if you're afraid to ask that question, it provides you with a perfect way of not asking the question, because you're just asking for information. And everyone, knows what you're really asking them to do. So that's just a little tip and trick I like to give. And of course, after I say this, about a week later, one of these folks is going to email me and say, how many people added you on LinkedIn? And it's fine. You can feel free to add me on LinkedIn. That's fine. But I think it's a good trick to connect with people. And I know Brian and Delmy have both graciously put their email and their social media in the chat. And we'll send you all the contact information for everybody that you has presented today, to all the people who are registered presenters, so that you can have that at the end. Because I know we're all willing to connect with you on social media, to get emails, questions, and whatever you'd like. So we're actually a little bit over, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to thank our three panelists for coming and helping us present this session. There is one more session for the day that will start at 1:30, and that session is creating a culture of care, a cross-functional approach to caring for community during challenging times, which we are certainly in, and it feels like we've been in since 2020, but actually it's been longer than that. Thank you again on behalf of NASPA Region 2, and we look forward to continuing to connect with all of you. And we'll see you in a half an hour. Thank you again.